The Big D, WDRC, remembers the way it used to be.
Wise men say only fools rush in, but I can't. What?
No. Well, listen, I was going to say don't quit your day job, but I realized you don't have
a day
You're
job.
retired.
Yeah, I know. So.
Yeah, those are the almighty pipes. That voice is the voice of our next guest, and that's Bill Rock, the Rock of Connecticut.
The Bill Rock?
Bill Rock.
The guy that was on radio with
Big
the Elvis
D,
show?
huge career. He's done everything. But see, the thing is, he actually went all the way through. You're doing it's like a flashback. You're talking about Elvis Radio, which of course he was the first voice on there. He got it started. So
Excellent.
we're
Yeah.
going to go back to the beginning now because he's on the phone. I hope. How you doing, Bill?
Great. You guys sound like you're having a party.
Oh yeah, much more fun. We need to increase the medication.
Yes.
Hey, Bill.
Remember, Big D is fun, and fun is Big D in Hartford.
Oh my God.
You got it.
You know, Bill grew up. Well, Bill, you tell the story. How old were you when you first discovered WDRC?
Long before my 57-year career began. Actually, I was a kid in Bloomfield. I lived in Wittenberry Hill, which was a development about a half a mile from where WDRC is.
Wow.
And it really started when my father had befriended a guy named Cal Colby, who was on in the 1950s. And he brought me down to the station one night, and I was in the studio that has the grand piano. I had the grand piano in it, and had me read a weather forecast. I eventually didn't learn to read after that, which helped me for my career. But at the time, I guess it was okay for a 7-year-old.
Wow.
But later on, I went to listen to DRC all the time. I had a crystal set on my bed, and I had the headset. It was those old ceramic headsets.
Yep.
And I could look out the window and see the towers. And but I remember all the early guys from when DRC turned to rock back in the 50s, or I guess it was 1960 or something like that.
Yep.
Yeah. August 18th, 1960.
Right. There was, remember Jim Rayner and Bishop's Corner, Jerry Bishop.
Oh boy.
And some kid named
Yeah, I know.
Dick
I go
Robinson.
back. But the morning man that was on for years, I can't think of his name now.
Was that Ron
He went out
Landry?
to Hollywood and did some writing. I
Yeah,
guess, for some of- yeah.
Ron Landry. Yep.
Ron Landry.
Yep.
I used to call Ron Landry up. I had a band at the time. And I played these songs on the piano and asked him to help me name them. Well, eventually, when I got a regular band together, by the time I was 12, he hired me to do some record hops.
Wow. That's great.
But,
you had a long, lustrous
I
career.
always wanted to
DRC.
work at WDRC. In fact, it's what really got me to get into radio back in the 1960s. And on or about 1967, I was in college at my radio station, WSOU, which is the Seton Hall University in South Orange. I had drove up to Hartford and recorded the jingles and the commercials and the rejoins and the imaging work. And I put together a tape. I'd never done Top 40 before, but I wanted to see your dad, Charlie, and played it for him, and he was laughing his butt off. He loved it. He said to me, well, okay, I'm going to put you on the air. It's $3 an hour, okay? I said, is that all I have to pay you to be on? He said, okay, you're hired.
Wow.
But I worked part-time when I was in college at DRC, and later on, again, I worked at DRC as the imaging voice back in about 2005 to 2010 in that area. And DRC has always been an important part of my career.
Now, Bill, this is Dave Overson here. I don't know if you recall, you came in around the mid-'70s to audition at DRC, and all I can
Well,
remember...
that was the second time when I'd
Yeah.
already been to Boston and Cleveland and Pittsburgh.
Yeah, you were worried about every 20 minutes. You had to run downstairs. We were at 750 Main Street. Had to run downstairs and put a quarter in the...
Right.
Run back upstairs. And you did a good audition, but the outtakes of your audition were tremendous. I mean, they were clean, but it was funny. And I played the whole tape for Charlie, and he and I were laughing like crazy in his office. And he says, God, he says, I could hire this guy just from the outtakes. He says, he says, I wish I could afford him. and that.
Well,
but-
I wanted, like I said, I started my career working in major markets in Pittsburgh, and then I went to Cleveland, and I was a program director in Albany, and I became a program director in Boston at WMEX, and I wanted to get back to Connecticut because that's my home. So I thought, well, let me go back to DRC, and that's when I did that. But what I ended up doing, Charlie said to me, he said, you're going to end up in New York. And less than a month later on, I was in New York at WNBC.
Unbelievable.
It was my first New York station. I did weekends at WWDJ in New York. I was at WNBC for about 4 years. I was they changed my name at WNBC originally, and I changed it back when I became program director back in 1976.
Wow. So
And the name they gave me was Radio City Bill Rockefeller.
That's great. That's great.
And Bill Rock is in there.
yeah, well, you know.
You have to use a microscope to find it, but it's in there.
Yeah.
And because at the time we had Cousin Brucey and Big Al Brady, or just plain Al Brady rather, Oogie Pringle, and everybody had to have kind of like Anonymous in the Morning. Everybody had to have kind of a stage name. So they gave me that.
Good. That was funny. Yeah.
But then in 1976, when the program director left, I became acting program director, and I changed my name back to Bill Rock.
Good move.
It's been that ever since.
Does anybody know who you really are, Bill? I mean, you've been, it's all over the place, but...
They know him by sound, but not by his name.
Oh, okay, okay. But yeah, and you're still one of the... you got the golden pipes, and you're still all over network stuff. And, you know, Bill and I went out to lunch one time, many years ago, over down in New Haven. I think it was at Savin Rock. And
It was the Jimmy's.
Jimmy's, yeah.
Yeah.
And
Oh, West Haven there, yeah.
we're sitting
Were
there.
the old Jimmys or the...
This was
Well, the
would
new
have...
Jimmy's. I lived right across the street
Oh,
from
right,
there at
yeah.
the Ocean View condominiums at the time.
Yep.
yeah, nothing
And
beats the old Jimmys. That's
all
for
the way during the during lunch, he kept, you know, getting these messages. He had another message from NBC, and he's, you know, on the phone, he's doing another NBC. And he said to me, you know, a short while ago, he says, I always felt bad that I kept getting interrupted by NBC. And I said, I never thought it was really them anyways. And it really was. So I think it's great. And, you know, as I said to you, my dad was always so thrilled when he would hear you doing all these huge national things and always coming back to Connecticut. And, of course, you know, in today's world, wow. But you really, after all the places you've worked and all the television and all the big stuff you've done on camera and off camera, where did the whole thing start with Elvis Radio? How did you connect with Sirius back then where it was hardly doing anything at all? How did that all come about?
Well, I had worked at a lot of places in New York. I worked, as I said, at NBC. I also was on WYNY for about 16 years.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
And one of the things I did at WYNY is we did a special with Elvis's birthday, and another special during Elvis Week, which of course is when he passed away, which was August 16th. But one of the guys who was an intern at WYNY became vice president of programming for Sirius, and Steve Blatter. And so at the time I was doing the 60s channel, Channel 6, and I was doing the 50s channel, Channel 5. I was doing the morning show on the 50s channel. And I was also doing the country channel, which was started out at 61 and became 32. And Steve came to me along with what's his name? I can't remember now. Sterling. It'll come to me. Anyway, and Jay Clark, who was the president who I'd worked with at WDRY in Albany years earlier, he said to me, we want you to be a part of something that's going to be brand new, that's going to begin on July 2nd. That was back in 2004, which was the 50th anniversary of rock and roll. Said, we want you to be part of it, but we can't tell you what it is. I said,
That's radio.
Excuse me. I said, why not? They said, well, it's a secret. We're gonna do something that's never been done before, and we'd like you to do it. I said, all right, sounds good. Count me in. So about a week before we did it, they told me they were going to fly me to Memphis, to Graceland, and they had that huge portable studio called the Rhythm of the Road, and they set that up, and it was the 50th anniversary of rock and roll and the anniversary of Elvis recording That's All Right Mama. So I did this 4-day remote from there, and that became Elvis Radio. They said they wanted me to run it. And I said, well, no, I'm in New York. At the time, I was at NBC Television, CBS FM. I was doing work on theirs for them, too. And I had my own company, which I was making television shows. And the other 3 channels on Sirius. But I liked it so much. They said, well, if you can't do that, what can you do? And I said, well, how about if I do Saturday nights? And I did that for another 18 years.
Wow.
Wow. Yeah, and it's always, people really do miss you, and they're really waiting for the day when you may hopefully come back to the Elvis Channel, because you were always the voice of the Elvis Channel. Just and you got huge following.
I began with about 5,000 contacts or friends on Facebook, and I get a lot of feedback from people who remember what we did. The Saturday night, what we did when I was on WYNY, I did a show called the Saturday Night Country Club. And for every record, I played that's an old term. For every song, I would do a telephone call, and it was all live. There was no delay or anything on it. Excuse me. And it was a very audience-oriented show, and I did the same type of show on Elvis Radio. I did a thing called Bill Rock's Saturday Night Elvis Memories, and then Soundtrack Saturday Night, which featured the music of Elvis's movies.
Yep.
But Bill Rock's Saturday Night Elvis Memories was all very audience-centric. They told me their memories. I would produce those. We do phone calls. We do special salutes. It was really tied in thematically every week. I'm sure you heard the show. So
oh gosh, yes, fantastic.
So,
but that was they gave me free rein to do whatever I wanted, which is another thing that's very difficult to get in radio these days.
Yeah. No.
oh yeah, even back then it was difficult. I mean, program directors had everything.
Oh yeah,
You know,
yeah.
so
But you know
so
something
tight.
though. What you say that Bill had that great sense of humor and everything else. But that was one of the cool things about my dad. He'd hire somebody like Bill because it made him laugh and he saw what he had, and then he would just send him in a direction, give him and let him do his own thing, and that's what made all the guys so special. They didn't have to have everything written out and timed out. And I remember one time after my dad had gotten the program director of the year from Billboard, and somebody's picking his brain. Charlie, he's drawing all these. He's drawing. he's drawing all these pies in front of him. And he was talking about format clocks, and he's this and this and this, and he goes, so Charlie, what do you use for a clock? He goes, I got one on the wall. He goes, but how do you guys know what to say and what to play and when to play it? He goes, my guys know what to say and when to say it and what to play and when to play it. that was.
It's funny. The first time I got free rein to do that was when I was hired at WNBC. I was in Boston at WMEX, and I got a call from Al Brady at the time, who I'd worked with at WWDJ. He said, we have an opening for a production manager and weekends at NBC. You want to come down and audition for it? I said, yeah, sure. So I got on the train and went to New York. At the time, I was living in Connecticut. But, excuse me.
Yep.
I went into New York and I interviewed with John Lund, who was the program director at the time. I got back on the train, and this was around Christmas time. It was just before New Year's. And when I got home, my wife told me, said, you got a call from New York. You got to call him back right away. So I called him, and John Lund says, we forgot that Dick Summer is on vacation. He does midnights. Get back in here and do a show tonight. It's about 7 o'clock.
Oh, my God.
Oh.
So I got on the train, went back, and I walked into the studio. Vic Lombardo, who was Guy Lombardo's nephew, was the engineer at the time.
Wow.
And the studio was empty because Loogie Pringle had just left. I got there at 11:45. So I got on the air and I said, what's the format? He said, there is no format. Said, just do a show.
Oh, my God.
Oh, wow.
So I did, and we had the Lazy Susans with the card machines, with the cartridges in the back of it, and I just picked out my favorite songs and just talked and just put a show together. Then when I got at the log at 2 o'clock in the morning, it said talk show. So I said, what's this? He said, "Oh, I forgot. We have for our public service commitment. We have to do a talk show 2 hours a day." He said, "What the hell am I going to talk about for 2 hours?"
Wow.
So I just opened the mic and started talking and asked for calls. And it was really quite an experience. I remember getting off the air at 6 o'clock in the morning. I was absolutely drained.
Well, that's amazing because, that's a broadcaster. When you can do just about everything. I know when Steve and I, in the mid-'90s, Steve called me. He says, "I'm doing a talk show on a competitive station, WPOP, I'll just say it." And I said, "Oh, good." I says, he asked me to help him. I said, "Sure, I'd be glad to." I said, "What are you going to call the show?" And it's going to be called Steve Parker and Company. I says, "Great. Yeah, whatever I can do to help you." Hangs the phone up. 10 minutes later, he calls me and says, "I got to have a sidekick with me." I says, "No, you don't need a sidekick. You can do it all by yourself." "No, I got a guy in mind." I says, "Who?" "You." I says, "Me?" I said, "I haven't been on the air in years." And he says, "Nope." He says, "You're going to be it." And that's how we did Steve
And
Parker.
the ulterior motive, Bill, just so you know what made him so special, is I hadn't been on the air in a long, long time.
Neither one of us.
It was a very, very long time. I didn't have a clue what friggin' buttons to push, what to do, which way to turn. So for the first week or two, Dave was in the anchor chair, and I was in the guest chair, and it was like Connecticut School of Broadcasting. It's learn by doing. And gradually, he'd let me on there, and even during the show, he'd go, "Steve, it's the button on the left. Yeah, hit that one over there." But it was that was my ulterior motive. Plus, I knew he was. A lot of us had the same type of rhythm with our comedy. Let's put it that way. And that was always the problem too, because if there was something obscene running through the back of your brain, it was always running. It was always obscene in the back of his brain. But a lot of breakups on that. Boy, oh boy. Well, listen, Bill. Anything you want to add, Bill, before you go? Because I don't want to hold you too long. I know you've got a lot of other commitments going on, but. Before we let you dash, is there anything you'd like to throw our way?
Well, there's a million stories about your dad I could tell, but I won't.
That's what he would probably prefer.
Although I will say that when I've been through many programs. I was a program director myself, and first of all at TRY in Albany, MEX in Boston, NBC in New York. I was program director at WVLI in New Haven. In fact, I was the vice president of programming for all 8 stations in New Orleans, Oklahoma, Miami, and Connecticut.
Wow.
And at WYNY alone, I went through 13 program directors. Survived 2 formats and 5 changes. The reason I tell you this is because of all the program directors I ever worked for, Charlie was the best. Charlie taught me humility. He taught me how to work with people. He taught me that as a program director, you're a coach. You encourage and nurture people's talent. You don't tell them what to do. I worked for a lot of really bad program directors, but Charlie was the best.
He was. No. Yeah, a legend in his own time.
Well, I thank you so much, Bill, for sharing that. And we hear that a lot, and I think he was probably right on par with all of the guys as far as his humor, his wit, if he hired somebody to be a little bit of a bad boy, he'd show them how they could do it, a bad boy even better. But he did. He saw the talent in you when you waited in that lobby for 8 or 9 hours for him to finally come out at 1 in the morning and say, "Are you still here?" And then
that's exactly what happened. I went there at 9 o'clock in the morning. It was about 11:30 at night, and I didn't eat lunch. I didn't eat dinner. I just sat there. I watched the guys work. I think John Rohde was on the air at the time.
Oh yeah.
And then there was, of course, Ken Griffin was on. Ken was great. Then yeah. Brad Field, I think, was on for a while. Anyway, I watched all these guys and took everything in. I had my little tape in my hand waiting for Charlie. Charlie walks out. Everybody was gone. I don't know who was on the air at the time, but the lobby was dark. This was on Main Street in Hartford. He looked at me and said, "Jesus Christ, are you still here?"
Oh, yeah.
And I said, yes, Mr. Parker. He said, "Well, come on in. I'll listen to your tape." And we had the greatest time.
Yeah. Charlie's sense of humor was loved by all.
Oh,
I mean,
nobody could.
And yet he could be as serious as can be. I mean, Charlie
yeah.
Charlie was
Well,
just,
it's funny. When I was the program director of WMEX in Boston, I hired, first of all, Gary DeGrade, and then
Oh, yeah.
I hired Jim Harrington. Then I got a call from Charlie. Stop stealing my guys!
And years later, he ended up going up there to recreate up in Boston the Secret Sound, and they had him coming in as a consultant. And I think that was probably maybe around 1986 or so, somewhere into the mid to later 80s. And he never got treated with that kind of respect and from the upper folks there. And he really felt in his career that was great. But he did go to another radio station in this market as a consultant one time, and they said, Charlie, got to do the Secret Sound. He goes, no. He says, that's WDRC's contest. Doesn't mean we can't do Name That Noise.
Well, speaking about the Secret Sound, I recorded all one of the several later renditions of the imaging for that. The Secret Sound, dun 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 dun. So I recorded that. And I gave it to the engineer. We had engineers at my college radio station, and he played that.
wow.
And I said, what the hell am I going to do for that? So there was a bathroom right off of the studio. I opened the door and flushed the toilet. And Charlie just cracked up.
Oh, God, yep. Trying to identify this round of sound. Nothing made him happier than
so many great things that I learned from Charlie.
Oh.
Two places that I've worked, or three places that I worked that I learned, or two places I worked that I learned promotion a lot was Wixie in Cleveland and DRC. And I used a lot of that later on when I was a program director myself. I used it at NBC, I used it at TRY, I used it in Boston, MEX. But Charlie was the best. Whenever I think of DRC, I always think of Charlie.
Well, I thank you. You know what I really...
And you too, Steve.
Thank you, Bill. I think
And
one of my regrets is that out of all the years that I was in the business, all these people say these great things about my dad. Never thought to send a tape to any of these people that have done. Oh yeah, and now I'm here and I'm here and I'm here and I'm going. Oh, that's great. And then I went, wow. Probably should have sent a tape.
Yeah.
Well, another thing about DRC, I remember, again, I was on Main Street in Hartford at the time I went to work there. Although when I was the imaging voice, it was back on Blue Hills Avenue in Bloomfield. Mm-hmm. But I remember the studios. It was in the shape of a D,
yep.
And it had all this wood paneling and glass and carpeting. And it just was exciting to work there as a kid.
It was the Taj Mahal of Hartford. And it was state-of-the-art equipment, and it was a pleasure. It was
Well, when I went to Cleveland, they had that sort of thing, too. Wixie was #1 in Cleveland at the time. They were beating out CKLW from Detroit, Windsor, which was coming in like a powerhouse. Mm-hmm. But it looked like a spaceship, the way they did it. They had carpeting up the wall. They had these oval-shaped windows. Mm-hmm. They'd have a light would come down to like a tear-shaped shade on it that would be over a specific piece of equipment. It was amazing. NBC had kind of Spartan studios, actually. We were on the second floor of them at the time was the RCA building, which today is the Comcast building. I've been going into that building since 1974, because I'm still doing work for NBC. It's my 27th year at NBC, as a matter of fact.
Unbelievable.
But then when I went to Sirius, they too there were no walls. Everything was glass, which was good and bad.
Yeah, I was going to say, with all the soundproofing, and they had glass bounces sound like crazy.
Where is Sirius in New York?
Yeah, it's right across. Well, as a matter of fact, it's NBC in Rockefeller Center. Right across the street is Sirius XM, and at the time on Times Square was CBS FM. I was working for all three, and I'd take the train to New York and spend a day, like a 24-hour day in New York.
Wow.
I would work doing stuff for NBC television. And I'd go over and do 3 and 4 channels I was doing on Sirius. And then I would work whenever time was left at CBS FM. I was a busy guy. Plus, I had my own production company. And in fact, if you go to my website, BillRock.com, let me repeat that, BillRock.com. It goes by so fast, nobody knows what I said. But if you go there, I have
BillRock.com. Got it.
Yeah.
I have a page that tell some of the people that I've worked with. I've got Imus, of course, who I worked with. Imus once said at his roast, by the way, we had a roast from him, his 40th birthday. Well, I should tell you another story before I tell you that. He came up to me when I first worked there, and he liked what I did. He said, RCB. He called me RCB because Radio City Bill was the name that I used there.
Oh, okay.
Or was given, I should say. He said, I want you to do me a favor. I just come out with a new comedy album called This Hockey's Nuts. And I want you to do the commercial for it. So I did. I did two commercials. He didn't tell me how much he was going to pay me for it. But when I gave him the commercials, he liked them so much, he reached in his pocket and pulled out 8 $100 bills.
Wow.
And at the roast, he was the MC at his own roast at his own restaurant. He had a restaurant called Imus.
Oh, wow.
And it was like a burger type place. But he introduced me as, I want you to meet the guy who made more money than I did on the goddamn rights for this, the rights for the This Hockey's Nuts. And I found out he never got residuals from it. They didn't pay him.
Really? Wow.
Oh, my God.
That's radio.
Yeah, I tell you, for somebody who's also got a great sense of humor and always off the cuff, and you really know how to play it straight, but so sometimes you're crazy and sometimes you're serious. Get it serious, both ways. Oh, wow. All right, Bill, well, thanks a lot for, this is, you gave us quite a bit here and shared so much of your career, but again, I'm telling you, folks, Bill has done it all, and we could do, endless hours with Bill. And if you go to BillRock.com, as Bill would tell you, I want to say that a second time, BillRock.com, and all kinds of stuff there, and you could be hooked on that. And just can't thank you enough, my Big D brother. It means the world. Thank you for spending some time with us today.
Well, you guys are the best, so I really appreciate it, and I was so happy to be a little part of this 100th anniversary of a great radio station.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, Bill. And it's, I think can you still see the towers from your house when you go to bed?
Well, I live on the shore now. Fortunately, I live on the water. But,
I
still see it the image in my mind, though. There was nothing like DRC. It was just a great radio station. Far too great for the market size it was in. I mean, Charlie, I talked to a couple of people and said that Charlie should have been in New York, because he really was the greatest program director I ever worked for.
Well, it was funny. When I finally had the chance to do some stuff on the air, it was hysterical because my program director, I was just doing part-time overnights. It was minimum wage. And my program director would sit there and we'd do listening sessions. And I'm going to go, I got Charlie Parker at home. You really want to keep using this time right now? But, as I've often said, when I finally had the chance and Dad was retired and I went on to another radio station. I just couldn't wait to be on the air, and I'm like, Dad, you've named all these great names. Ken Clark, Bradley Field. A lot of these guys, and Sandy Beach, and all these great names. And I said, what should I use as a radio name? He says, I gave it to you when you were born, and that's why I'm still Steve Parker. All right, thanks again, Bill.
This is why I find it very ironic that I had my name changed 3 times in the industry. First time was when I went to Pittsburgh. They changed it to Sean Grabowski.
What?
Because of the Polish and the Irish population in Pittsburgh. I did one of the features I did was the Sean Grabowski cookbook. That's another story. It'll take much too long to tell. But anyway, when I went to WWDJ, they gave me the name of Chuck Cooper. That's because we had Warner Johnny and Bill Bailey. Everybody had a fake name, so they gave me a fake name. And I told you when I went to NBC, it was Bill Rockefeller. But the point is that my real name is Bill Rock.
You were born with a radio name, too.
Yep.
Bill Rock.
And the voice to go with it, too. Definitely.
All right, man. Talk to you soon, and we'll be looking for you because we'll be looking and listening for you. So just keep doing what you're doing, and I should probably send you a tape. All right, see you later, Bill. Take care.
Hey, thanks a lot. You guys are the best. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Should I do my Elvis song now?
Don't do your Elvis. Don't do your... Please, don't do that. You do the Elvis. Don't...
Here on WDRC, it's the spot WDRC.